Hey everybody, Doward here. I've got the new Helion Dominus aluminum threaded shocks that I'm going to compare to the stock shocks. Give you guys an idea of what you get for your 50 bucks. So, let's start disassembling these things. I'm going to go ahead and take measurements of all of this as I go. I'm very glad to see that those are not over tightened. See, we do have a air bladder in there. Nice flexible air bladder. Going to remove the oil, which, oh wow, it's freaking hideous. This was due for some fresh oil. Let's take a look here and get this out. Oh, no. There's our seals. Alright, let's clean it down, see what kind of piston and whatnot we've got in this. Start getting some measurements. Okay, this is a 3-hole piston, and if you notice, the holes are around the edge. It's an interesting setup. Now, one thing I can say I don't really like here is, if you notice, these threads are coarse thread. There's only like 4 or 5 threads holding these on. That's really horrible. Like, really. Alright, so the way that these guys go together, both of these spacers go on top of here, which goes down through this hole. You put on one of the red O-rings, little spacer, second O-ring. All of that squeezes down into there. Screw the bottom on with its whole 4 or 5 threads. Push this through, and there you are. Now, as for size, these are a 10mm bore, .30 and a half millimeter depth. So I'll calculate that volume out in a little while. As heavy as these are, and being that these have 3 holes, I'm actually going to go with 40 weight oil on these guys. Not that I really expect to use them, because hey, I have the upgraded ones. Get the bubbles out. See, it's part of what I don't like about having those 2 spacers down there. Very, very easy for air to get trapped up behind there now. Still see I've got air bubbles coming out. Now, if I were actually like racing this vehicle or something like that, I would actually let these sit out overnight just to ensure that I had all the air out. But I don't, so I'm not. nicely adjusted. Alright. Now, let's compare that to the other set. Now, a few big changes right off the bat. You get these big, feel like steel. I'll verify that with a magnet later. See, they're much bigger diameter, much bigger springs. These have a lot of stiction to them. They require some force before you even overcome that stiction to get them to work. Still got this weird plastic aluminum cap top thing. Alright, let's pull this apart and see what you get for your money. And just to make sure I don't mix up any of the parts, I'll leave these over here. See, this is an aluminum body. Nice close up there, very fine threaded. Obviously it's got an aluminum shock adjuster on there. And evidently no oil. Now the rod ends stock and on these upgraded shocks have the same kind of a brass or a bronze bushing in it instead of plastic, which is nice. As for these guys, let's see what we got here. I actually already took one of these guys apart. My camera failed in the middle of it, so I already kind of know what I'm getting into here. Pop this out. Pop this out. The threading on these guys, on these shocks, is actually the same threading all the way throughout. Man, they are filled so poorly. You see the bubbles in there just from me bouncing that a couple of times. It is insane. Just crazy. Let's get that out of there. Now I'll go ahead and let you know that these are actually 2-hole pistons that come with the upgraded shocks, which I thought was kind of interesting. Another nice thing too is they actually do not have that spacer underneath, which I really like. Get the rod end off, and I'll pull the rod out. These are standard 3mm as well. I'm going to take the overall length because I'm curious if I can get a set of aftermarket titanium nitrided shocks to put in there. Set that there, clean this down, wipe up the oil. But just to show, these are still 3mm diameter. These have an overall length of 51mm. And you'll see that the tops of these actually bolt on with a lock nut, which I think is really kind of cheesy, but I suppose it would work. As you can see there, they are 2-hole. And as a matter of fact, yep, just some oil in there. Okay. Thought maybe one hole was smaller than the other, and that would have been really odd. Now, the adjuster is aluminum. The body is aluminum. As you can see, it's got the same threading all the way throughout. So these are nice fine thread. You get a good solid hold. Good purchase on there. The bottom seals are actually held in with a tiny little spring clip there. And I will tell you, it is kind of a pain to get that out. I use a very small flathead screwdriver in order to pop that out of there. The seal assembly is identical to the stock shocks here. It's got the two reds with the one spacer in between, and then it's got a block spacer that goes underneath. Now, one thing I did rant on before the camera died on me is if you look at the design on the end of this, it's very clear there was supposed to be a cap of some sort to go right on here. I mean, it's got this little, incline edge with a little lip underneath there. Why on earth these don't come with little silicone caps to keep dust and all out from under here is beyond me. I'm really disappointed in that. I think that was a very easy adaptation they could have done that really would have made a difference on these. But that's okay. That's what the aftermarket's for. Though I don't expect to see the likes of RPM or Proline supporting a Dominus. There's always the little guy. So that will be on my list of things to do. Now, since these are 2-hole piston, I like to start with 30 weight. So I'm gonna fill these guys up with some 30 weight oil. As soon as I figure out that I should open it first. And of course I fill these up and then realize that I didn't take those dimensions. Being that these are brand new, I'm just going to pour the oil right back in. No point in wasting it. I can be a bit scatterbrained at times. Just ask my wife. These are, if I remember correctly, were 13 millimeter inner diameter. 10, 11, 12.5 millimeter is what I've got there. And they are nice and deep, which I really like. 33 millimeters deep. It's not a bad volume at all. And since I actually can put this piston all the way down, you'll see that I've not got nearly as much in the way of bubbles. Get some slight bubbling in there. Top it off. Screw our cap back on. My air bladder is working. Now, as far as springs, these guys sit on 16 millimeter springs. Oh yeah, that feels good. The nice thing too is, number 4, the other shocks, these guys slide in nice and smooth. Much reduced stiction there. The stock shocks sit on 14 millimeter springs. Alright, now obviously I've got to do the other 2 shocks too to match them up with these guys, but I wanted to give you an idea of what you get here. It's got the aluminum top. This is a plastic piece here, and then it's actually got a metal standoff. You notice that the the piece there obviously has to sit out a little further. These guys have to sit out a little further, which I found interesting that the bottoms don't seem to have anything. So I believe what they intend for you to do is actually take these bottom blocks and perhaps put them in there as a standoff. I don't know, we'll see. I haven't quite got to the assembly procedure yet, but when I do, I'll be sure to record that and let you guys know how it goes. Helion Dominus. These are HLNA0182 aluminum threaded shock set. 50 bucks from your nearest hobby town. And I gotta say, if they would have had the rubber cap like they should have, I would wholeheartedly recommend these guys based on the construction versus the stock ones. I still think they're $50 worth of shock. I think you get your money's worth out of it, but I don't think it's the deal of the century. That's how I'll put that. So, yeah, there you go.